Man, I grew up in Panama. I was born and raised in Panama. So for us, soccer, baseball, American football, they were all staples, but also boxing. I grew up watching boxing a lot. My mother, she's no longer with us, but she was a big fan of boxing. And that's another sport, right? Where you're just getting pounded over and over again. And back in the day, if you remember, legends, they will have two fights a month. Nowadays fights have, fighters may fight, once or twice a year, right? So
The goal of every other sport is to win, score goals, or score touchdowns, or score points. The goal in boxing is to give the other boxer a concussion.
indeed, indeed. You mentioned neurofeedback. Both of you and I have had an experience in neurofeedback. I don't remember if in our last conversation if I shared with you my experience, but I used to play a little bit of baseball, a little bit of softball, recreational, somewhat competitive, and I got hit by a baseball, on the right side of my head. This was, I don't know, 35 years ago, and 35 years ago. I didn't think anything of it. I was in college. I wasn't, didn't have insurance or anything. So you just keep going. Fast forward to about 8 years ago, I was getting some training on neurofeedback with a particular product. I was curious about it, so I wanted to learn more about it. And they did the head scan, and they did the Loretta analysis and all that stuff. And the gentleman says, "Hey, you have an area here that is an area of concern. What happened to you there?" And I'm like, I have no idea. It took me a while to remember that however long ago I got hit by a baseball. It's like, yeah, this happened to you. It's still there. We can see traces of that. The good news is it looks like you've worked around it. You've gotten busy. You've done certain things that are good for yourself, and your brain is just going to try to do its best to do some rewiring, some reframing. And neurofeedback is one of those tools that helps with that. You have also some personal experience with neurofeedback. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So, what happens when the brain is damaged is that you have areas that are not getting blood flow, and we now know what parts of the brain do what, so you can almost see what you're doing. Neurofeedback can heal that to a certain extent. But I'll give you an example of neurofeedback. I went. I've been working with a group called IQ Mind, and they've been treating my brain because I had three concussions. I just fell, and you could see where there was a lack of blood flow. So that ultimately is going to affect how fast you mentally process and make connections, and your level of analysis of what's going on in the world, and your memory. So I went down to a place called Nestry in Lake Nona, which is a health and wellness community. And a doctor named Tommy Shavers worked with me. He said, "Do you have any cognitive problems?" And I said, "Well, Dr. Shavers, I can see the picture of a movie star or an athlete or a celebrity in the paper. I can tell you every movie that actress did. I can tell you everything about that athlete. I just can't get their name out. No, I can't get their name out." So they blew up my brain, put it on a big screen, and they said, "See, you got a block there in the area which is verbal processing and name recognition." And they worked with me for a week, and the block went away. Neurofeedback, which for those who don't understand is electrodes against the brain that are operating with a machine that are tuning up your brain. Anyway, by the end of it, I was like a savant. I knew everything. But again, that's something that needs constant reinforcement.
Yeah, I've the first time I tried neurofeedback, I'm an engineer, so I'm not easily. I'm very curious about technology, and and I don't want to say I'm not easily, impressed, because I am. I am very curious. I'm like a little kid when it comes to technology. But to try the wet cap with the number of electrodes, right, and
Right.
then play the game, because they gave me a game to play, and they say, well, you're on this race with all these cars, right? You're the blue car. Your job is with your mind to make that car move. And I looked at them like, what? Yeah, yeah, what do you take? Yeah, just concentrate, and they were explaining to me the process was is as you try to concentrate, you start putting activity in certain parts of the brain. And when you put activity on a part of a particular electrode, right, that is the one that they want you to work on to get those waves up or down, then the car on the screen moves. And it feels like witchcraft at first. It's like, what is this, right? But it's really helping you get in tune with your body, in tune with your brain, to get that repair process, right? To get that opening for the potential for healing to take place. And I'm sure the experience with you was very similar.
So in my case, they had music and there was a cube, a big silver cube, and you were supposed to concentrate to try to keep it as a big cube. If you didn't emit the right brain waves, it went into fragments everywhere. And so it, it's there are many different forms. And another one, you're trying to make a sound with your brain waves. And if the sound stops or if it's interrupted, you feel like you're failing. So I'm there, but this is only possible because of breakthrough knowledge in terms of brain function.
So, what is your from a point of view of routine? We talked about neurofeedback, we talked about hyperbarics, talked about nutrition. We live in exciting times, but we also live in complicated times. I mean, we had a conversation here when you were here in Lake Nona, here in Orlando, about a month ago. You live out in the West Coast. Flying around, the country or the world, it pays a toll, right? On your routine. I imagine you have a routine. What kind of tips would you give the average person who's got, busy lives, in order to try to hone in a routine that works for them?
Well, first of all, I have a Fitbit and Apple Watch, so it's doing steps every day. It's moving the body. I work out with a personal trainer three times a week. Um, I've been doing a cleanse on my brain because there's heavy metals that come from the environment, and if you drink Fiji water and uh, if you and take charcoal pills, uh, that that clears it out. I do hyperbaric 3 or 4 times a week. I do that Bimini about 4 times a week. I just integrate these things, and you find other things to do. For example, in a hyperbaric session, uh, in the place I go to, they have Netflix right above the chamber. So it's not boring. You can spend an hour and catch up on your favorite things. I used to read in the infrared sauna, so I caught up on my reading. So because we're so busy, it goes back to the principle I discovered in college. You have a girlfriend and you need to see her. You have to get to the library to study. So you take your girlfriend with you to the library. Uh, uh, and then how many other positive things can you build into what you're doing? So you and I travel, um, but that gives me a chance to catch up on newspapers and magazines and books and to try to expand my brain. The other thing is to try to stay positive and um, how we view the world is just a matter of perception, right? And so you can view it as apocalyptic and negative and the rest of it. But I'm a believer that if you think positive thoughts, it releases a cascade of chemicals that are serotonin and dopamine, and if you think negative thoughts, it cortisol, epinephrine, so you can actually think your way. I know I don't mean that to sound too spacey, new age, but you can actually um, uh, keep your body healthier by having a positive outlook, by seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, by believing that things will have a good outcome. Um, I'd spend a lot of time doing service and trying to heal pain. And so all the different charities and community things that we do, I'm of the belief that through sports we can attack domestic violence and sex trafficking and bullying in middle school and high school, and the environment and racism, and by messaging. So if you have the heavyweight champion Lennox Lewis cut a public service announcement that says real men don't hit women, it can send a message to rebellious adolescents that 1,000 authority figures never could. And or Oscar De Loy and Steve Young prejudices foul play. So I believe that if you have a mission in life and you're motivated to try to heal and do good, that is a real basis of health also. It's doing unselfish acts of kindness, not for recognition, but just because my dad had another saying, Rafael. He used to say, if you're waiting for someone to solve a problem, as small as picking up a piece of trash off the floor, and as large as racism or the environment, the tendency is to keep waiting for the amorphous they or them to fix the problem. Older people, political figures. And he would look at me and say, son, you could wait forever for they or them. The they is you. You're the they. So I think if you imbue your life with some meaning and you try to see the light and stimulate that that alone makes you healthier.
I couldn't agree with you more. I am in the process of finishing my first book, which I would love to send you a copy, for your comments. But it's about it's 100% based on science, but made in a way that is more readable than your average science journal. Because that's one thing that I see is like we have, and what I love about the work that you're doing is, on one hand, we have a lot of people giving their lives to the scientific research that enables us to have these conversations, right? But a lot of times that research is not very digestible for the everyday person because it's tough science. I mean, they're doing some incredible things, and one of the things that I'm writing about is specifically this is the biology of good thinking, like what happens inside of your body, what happens in your gut biome. Everybody knows the placebo effect. Everybody knows that you can give 100 people, 50 of them a sugar pill and the other 50 a medication. In some percentage that is non-negligible, the people that took a sugar pill get better. Well, they were thinking they were getting a medication. And it's that process that starts that possibility to heal, that possibility to have better thoughts and to move better and to sleep better. And then, to your point, to go out there and be active and do more for the community. So that's one of the things that I've seen in my studying of science is that we're living in an exciting time where neuroscience and philosophy, ancient philosophy, Buddhism, Hinduism, and all these different traditions that talked about self reflection, talked about the mind, and talked about all these different things, Now you have departments, in fact, out there in the UC system that actually have neuroscience and philosophy combined, because now we can measure certain things. We can measure the power of meditation and what happens to your telomeres as you meditate, right? So again, I keep going back to this, but I think, having you here as a guest and having your story, this has got to be exciting to see the latest stuff that's coming out.
Um, and then there's the science of emetics, which says that we're electrical bundles, and that energy has the ability to connect. And you referenced meditating and healing, uh, changing water into ice, taking a prison in India and completely uh, setting how they deal with life, bringing the crime rate down. So there's a whole set of energy flowing in the world that we haven't totally quantified. Incidentally, I have a new book coming out in the fall too. It's called The Comeback, Resilience, Empathy, and What Matters. And it centers around the concept that all of us have reverses in life. That life inevitably will set you back, and it could be financial or romantic or family or addiction. And it stems out of my experience in struggling with alcohol 15 years ago, and trying to share what tools are possible to bring people from the darkness back into the light.
No, that is wonderful. I've had a number of guests. In fact, I have a good friend of mine, Charlie Engel, who was one of my very first guests when I started this journey of this podcast, and he he's now 35 years sober, and he's famous because he ran across the Sahara Desert. Uh, so that's two marathons a day for 111 days straight, right? So that's insanity right there. But he talks about that resilience that you just mentioned, right? And that sense of, on one hand, that discipline, but also on the other hand, the sense of having grace to yourself when you fall off the bandwagon, right? Which we all normally do, and that's why I was, earlier on talking about, your routine, because, whether you're running, trying to run across the Sahara Desert, or you're trying to play football, or you're just trying to live a life, there's going to be moments where your day may not go the way that you wanted to, and you didn't do some of the things that you need to do for yourself. And the only thing that matters is, well, I'm going to do better tomorrow. I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to be resilient. I'm not going to be myself because of the fact that I missed my hyperbaric session, or I missed this because I was flying in and the flight got delayed and all this other stuff. You just got to do it again tomorrow.
One of the tools I try to use is a sense of proportionality. So when you're in that period where you're starting to feel frustrated because things aren't going the way you want it, I try to remember that I'm not a starving peasant in Darfur. I'm not in the Ukraine under the Russian bombing situation. I'm not having the last name Steinberg in Nazi Germany in the late 30s. I don't have a cancer. I don't have heart problems. I live in a country with the highest standard of living anywhere, which hopefully survives as a political democracy. But all those gifts that I didn't work for are here. So get a sense of proportion in terms of the fact that given the thousands and thousands of years our species has been on this planet, we are in the best situation ever. They didn't have electricity. They didn't have uh, indoor bathrooms. They didn't have, you can go on and on. And here we are. So some people do a gratitude list, which is things that you feel gratitude for, but it can reshape your thinking, Raphael, to put in proportionality that upsetting little circumstance that didn't go your way is not important in the great picture of life, that you really have life pretty good.
We certainly do, Lee, and I agree with you. I tell the people that I mentor that the brain, and I love your thoughts on this, but the brain is like uh, it has an analogous to the muscle skeletal system in the body, in the sense that if I go to the gym today and I work out for an hour and then I go home and I look at myself, what do I see? Nothing. Nothing changes in one session. Nothing changes in 3 sessions. Nothing changes in 10 sessions. You have to have that discipline over time before you start seeing the physicality of you evolving. Similarly with the mind, whether I'm using tools like neurofeedback or I'm using other types of tools that are available, if I want my brain to behave in a certain way, sometime in the future, there are things I have to be doing now so that my brain gets to that point where it starts predicting things and situations in a way that is more conducive to the person I want to become.
So I um, usually say, be kind to your future self. Do those little things today that may not come to fruition immediately. And also, the best way is what I tell the players is stay in process. Stop worrying about ultimate results. Will I make the team? Will I play well? And do those steps that set you up best for success. And just stay in the process of doing those things. So for you, stay in the gym uh, and keep plugging away. And the fact you don't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger immediately doesn't mean you can't get there.
Well, Lee, we're almost out of time. I want to be respectful of your time. Um, I always end these conversations that the podcast name is Three Thoughts On, and today is Three Thoughts On your life story and the wonderful work you've been doing with your foundation and what you've done with all the players that have the fortune of having you as an agent. What will you tell the audience? Three things that you want to leave them with that they can start using right away in order to build a better version of themselves physically and mentally.
The first thing would be educate yourself to the cutting edge science, which is making all these modalities available. Um, and make sure that you're using the tools of preventative medicine and healing. Um, but educate yourself, make yourself aware of um, what the trends are in diet and sleep and gut health and all the rest of it. That'd be number one. Number two, we all have the capacity to make a positive difference in the world in our own time, in our own way. It may be that your most positive contribution is parenting. It may be that your most positive contribution is teaching. Um, but we all have that capacity. So the they is us. We're the they. And you can be an active actor in all of it. And the third thing is try to visualize the world or the life for yourself that you'd like to see. And don't give yourself limitations. Anything is possible. So, the last thing I'd say is I think the most important skill in life is listening. It's drawing out another human being, peeling back the layers of the onion until you get deeper and deeper into understanding someone else's greatest anxieties and fears and their greatest hopes and dreams. If you can put yourself in another person's heart and mind and see the world the way they see it, you can gracefully make your way through life.
That's wonderful. Like the old saying, right? We have two ears and one mouth, so at least listen twice as long as we speak, right? Lee, uh, people can find you at the Leigh Steinberg Foundation. I encourage everybody online, please go check out Leigh's work and all the wonderful things he's doing. Leigh, thank you for your time. I know you're a busy man. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It was a pleasure meeting you here. I'm looking forward to your next visit to Lake Nona. Hopefully, we can
Uh,
make that happen soon.
exactly. It's leigh steinberg foundation.org is how you can find it, or me, Lee at steinbergspeaks.com.
Leigh, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.